Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Scotland. For those of you who are not so clear with the geography of the British Isles and Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the United Kingdom, and also the Celtic nations of which Scotland is a part, and excuse me for my pronunciation, but the Gaelic word for Scotland is Alba. It's not Alba, it's Alba, approximately. And we are here in the blue. You might notice, for those of you who know a little bit about British accents, I'm not Scottish, I'm actually from the red area on this map. Now, Scotland has a very special place within Great Britain and the United Kingdom. It even has its own coat of arms, which sets it apart from some of the other nations within. But one thing that binds us all, and that includes actually the southern part of Ireland, is the British Lions, the rugby. And for those of you who've been following, and I do apologize for any Australians in the crowd, where we recently won the tour to Australia. This has been binding us together since the 1880s, and actually the most prolific scorer is a Scotsman, Andy Irvine, and that's really the proud part of this nation, and the Great Britain and the United Kingdom and the British and Irish Lions. Now, Scotland actually is a great tradition, history, particularly in innovation. And if we look at James Watt, known to everyone, really for improving on the steam engine, not the inventor, but in the mid to late 18th century, improved on this invention so far that it really did spark the steam age and the Industrial Revolution. And he actually was an instrument maker here at the University of Glasgow. So he's a local man that really 250 years ago sparked the Industrial Revolution, not just in the UK, but globally. And parallel to that, at almost exactly the same time, perhaps lesser known, somebody called the father of economics, or sometimes also known as the father of capitalism, who defined free trade, how it would work, at almost exactly the same time in the 1770s, was Adam Smith, who also studied here in Glasgow. Now, the UK has a tradition of powder metallurgy. If you look at the date, it goes back to the 1950s, so it's nearly 80 years now. And there have been a number of group meetings within the powder metallurgy group within the UK. Didn't come to Glasgow, and certainly not in the last 40 to 50 years, but they have been to Scotland. And you can see a list there of some of the challenges that they were discussing, the uses of energy, the development of new materials processes. So it's looking back in the mirror, you can see the same thing was being considered all those years ago and for many decades within the UK powder metallurgy. And there's going to be somebody on stage in a moment. Maybe you can recognize that person here in this picture 40 years ago. And we'll see him in just a moment. But I must say, in the 1980s, when I was sort of in my late teens and early 20s, I don't remember wearing clothes like that. I seem to sort of remember slightly more vibrant shell suits and so on. And this country is also, in the UK, has also been host to world and other conferences. And the first World PM after the formation of the European powder metallurgy in 1989 was actually in Wembley. So is there anybody here that was actually at that conference? 1, 2, 3, yeah. Okay, at least some of us have been around long enough. I didn't make it to that one. I also didn't quite make it to this one, which is the last European in Birmingham. This was the year before I made my first foray into powder metallurgy at conferences. And so at Birmingham in 1995, there was also a European. So this is now the first time in nearly 30 years, that we've been back in the United Kingdom, and I welcome you all to Scotland and to Glasgow and to the European conference. And with that, I will hand over to my co-chair. Thank you.
Dear delegates and friends, also from my side, a warm welcome to European 2025 in this nice city of Glasgow. As we learned just now, it's the first time since '95 that we have a PM Congress here on British soil, and I think you will agree this was overdue. However, It was not only the congresses where British soil was very important, but also the founding of first the EPMF, the Federation, and then 3 years later, EPMA, the European Powder Metallurgy Association. And here, I think one of the instrumental things to make it a success was the appointment of Bernard Williams as executive director, who, as longtime editor of Metal Powder Report, had the experience in PM and also the links to European powder metallurgy industry and research institutions, and also overseas, to make EPMA really well established in the PM world. When Bernard retired, the job was taken over by Jonathan Rowe, who also did an excellent job in continuing the work on summer schools and education training groups and so on. Unfortunately, he died prematurely some years ago, I think about 10 years ago, and now it's the turn of Lionel. I think Lionel is not 10 years, about 9 years. Okay, thank you. Okay. However, we also have to consider and to remember one very important person for EPMA. This was Peter Bruin, longtime technical director of our institution. And you see from his short CV that he was experienced both in university and also in industry in forming a spin-off. And from '91, he was the first technical director of EPMA and was instrumental in introducing the thematic networks. As you see, he was also awarded several decorations, several prizes because of his successful work. And today in the evening, we shall award the Peter Bruin Poster Award to the most successful and the nicest poster to be presented here at the Congress. Well, if you look on the PM activities in Great Britain today, it's focusing mostly on additive manufacturing, not so much on the classical powder metallurgy activities, which were more or less still very vivid in the 80s, but now it's mostly AM. And as you can see, I hope you can read the numbers, the institutions are very successful in getting grants for AM research, and it's not only British in general, but also the Scottish universities who are quite successful when we look at the numbers. That means the activities on additive manufacturing on this fast-growing field of powder metallurgy are strong in Britain and especially strong in Scotland. When we look at the presentations from UK for this Congress here, this is confirmed because, as you can see, from the 9 presentations we have from British sources, 6 of them are about additive manufacturing. That means this has really developed into the main focus of research on powder metallurgy in the UK. Well, just a few statistics. We're all scientists, therefore we live off statistics. Just a few numbers we have. If we look on the topic groups, we can see the consolidation is strongest, then materials, powders, and tools for improving them, and applications are not so strong, which is a sort of a pity, but I think this is tradition. We always have problems in bringing the end users to our congresses. Well, if you look at the numbers, in total we have 159 presentations after the reviewing by the TPC, among them 19 posters and 140 oral presentations. And as you can see, compared to last year, there have been some slight changes, less material, more powders, but I think this is typical for congresses that the main topics are shifting from year to year. Well, where do the papers come from? And this is a European Congress, therefore it's not really surprising that most of the papers come from Europe, but we have also contributions from Asia, from North America, and also from other places. And this shows that the Congress is attractive just across the borders of Europe. Regarding the countries, well, Germany is first, but also others like Spain, Sweden, France, and the UK are quite active, but there's also a number from smaller countries like Austria. And you see that it's really a picture of the European PM activities with contributions from overseas. One picture I want to show you is the cumulative graphs for the submissions of the abstracts per deadline. And as you can see, there has been a shift. The abstracts come later and later. This is, it is tolerable, but it exerts pressure on the EPMA staff and also in the technical program committee, and therefore I would kindly ask you, if you decide to submit a paper to the next European Congresses, do this as early as possible. Thank you. Well, finally, I want to thank all to those who have contributed in organizing the Congress, of course, the EPMA team, the technical program committees, authors, chairpersons, reviewers. It's also a laborious task. Not to forget our exhibitors, very important, the sponsors. We have also many helping hands behind the scenes. And of course, my final big thanks go to all of you, because a Congress without delegates is not a Congress. Thank you.